Hey everybody, Dr. Ellen here, the Midlife Whisperer. Welcome to Rock Your Midlife. If you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining us. And if you're returning, I really appreciate you being here. If you're enjoying the show, please leave me a review. Let me know the kind of guests you'd like to hear. You can also reach me at themidlifewhisperer.com. That's themidlifewhisperer.com. And I am thrilled to be on the air today. I have two amazing women, and all month long, I am going to be talking about breast cancer because October, where we are recording, is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And it's an annual campaign to raise awareness about the impact of breast cancer. And I am living proof that early detection saves lives. So this month, I'll be talking with experts and survivors and sharing information about the importance of breast cancer screening and support. And I want to say that it's also really inspirational. So if you know cancer like me it's not on your vision board, you're not thinking about it very much, there's going to be great information about how you can reduce your risk, how you can support your friends. I mean, let's face it, 1 out of 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. We all know people who are in a battle for their lives, and we don't always know the best thing to do and what to say. And today I'm talking with 2 amazing survivors who turned a deadly diagnosis into a business that helps others. Michelle Beck, who founded Breast Friends, love that name, and Liz Benditt, who became an entrepreneur and created the Balm Box. And so I want to share a little bit about my story. If you've been following me on social media and listening to the podcast, you know that I haven't been shy about my diagnosis. I literally was diagnosed April 12th on my son's 21st birthday, about 3 weeks into starting the podcast. And I had a year contract with Voice America. So it was, my psyche was like, oh my God, you don't want to be doing a podcast right now. You're battling breast cancer. But, you know, it was a great way for me to pull myself together every week and give to others and share. And it's been an amazing experience. And I'm really here to say that cancer can happen to anybody. I am the healthiest person I know. I am a registered dietitian. I'm a board certified health and wellness coach. I eat probably 10 to 15 servings of vegetables every day. I move my body. I do all the things. I nursed 2 children for 3 years, separately, of course. But, you know, I did all the things. But I discovered 2 things about myself. One, I have a BRCA mutation. And so that is a mutation, a gene mutation that actually increases your risk of breast cancer, even though I have no family history. That was something that I discovered after my diagnosis. And the other thing is that I have what's called dense breasts. And I think this is something that was certainly new to me. And I think new to a lot of people out there. You know, a couple of years ago, I got this letter that was like, you have dense breasts, so you should have this breast density ultrasound. And I'm thinking, I have no family history. I'm so low risk. Like, it's not going to happen to me. And my mammogram was negative in October of 2021. My breast cancer, which was the size of a dime, super small, but still category 5, which means likely cancer, was found with a breast density ultrasound, which is totally painless. I'm here to say 2 mammograms, they don't hurt. They're easy to do, a little uncomfortable, but so well worth it. And I'm here to say that early detection does save lives. And while my breast cancer experience hasn't exactly been fun, it's been a walk in the park compared to people who I've met who have stage 3, stage 4. I did not lose my breasts. I did have a lumpectomy, which means they removed the tumor. I was doing my 10,000 steps the next day because I'm in great shape. Had radiation. The hardest part of radiation, frankly, was driving to and from the hospital every day because I live an hour away from the hospital and I live on an island and there's a drawbridge. So I had to time it to make sure I wasn't going to get stuck. And radiation didn't hurt. It was actually kind of my moment of Zen, just sort of lying there and, you know, just having to hold my breath, which is something you have to do. And now I am doing an immunotherapy. I have HER2 positive breast cancer. So I'm taking something called Herceptin. I am doing a boatload of alternative and complementary care, taking amazing care of myself. And, I'm here to say early detection makes it so much easier. So get that mammogram. And I want to talk a little bit too about some things you can do for prevention. So you can reduce your risk by eating more plants. And let's face it, eating more plants is a win-win. It helps with everything from giving you great skin and great energy, reducing your cancer risk, reducing your risk of heart disease, lowering your blood pressure. So just start by eating more plants. Just set an intention like I'm going to eat one more serving of plants every day for the next month, and then make it 2, and try to just place some of the meat that you eat with plant-based proteins, like maybe that veggie burger, or maybe having a tofu stir fry. So eating more plants, exercising. Don't need to do CrossFit, don't need to run a marathon. 30 minutes of walking every day is awesome. I just got myself a rebounder, which I love, a trampoline. I jump up and down for 10 minutes here and there throughout my day, but exercise really does reduce your risk. If you're smoking, stop. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer as well. Avoid or limit your alcohol consumption. You should be having no more than a drink a day, and sleep well. And if you want to know how to sleep well, listen to last week's podcast. I think it was episode 27. I had a great sleep expert on. We talked all about sleep, but I'm realizing, my goodness, sleep is like the most important thing. And I know that I haven't always, and I'm not the best sleeper. And that's one of the health things that I'm working on. And none of these things really cost anything. And it could reduce your risk and just make you healthier and enjoy your midlife more. So let's dig in with our first guest. She is Michelle Beck. She is a sister on so many levels, a breast cancer survivor like me. She's a silver sister, and we both have podcasts, radio shows on Voice America. So much that we have in common. She is a 2-time 10-year survivor of breast cancer. In 2017, she founded Breast Friends of Oregon to volunteer and found support that she did not know that she needed. In early 2019, she was hired as the patient program's assistant, and now also hosts Breast Friends Cancer Support Network podcast, which I will be on, I think, in November.
Yes.
In her free time, she enjoys exploring with her husband, Nate, their son, Jackson, and dogs, Apollo and Thor. She loves reading books and watching movies, and is obsessed with true crime and paranormal podcasts. Her second journey with breast cancer has led her to a new career, both as a breast cancer advocate, working on a book to tell her story, and speaking to audiences about how to move forward in the face of life's trials. Welcome to Rock Your Midlife. Michelle, so good to have you here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ellen. And I do need to do one quick correction. In my bio, it says I found Breast Friends. I didn't found it. I wish I did. So Breast Friends has actually been around for 22 years. They were founded by Sharon Hennepin and Becky Olson. But you know what? All press is good press. So we're going to just go forward with that.
And that was my wrong. I put the ED on that. I found support through them. So it's breast. You found.
I walked into Breast Friends as a volunteer.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
I have that here in Vermont.
No, unfortunately, it's a local organization that was founded here in Tigard, Oregon, outside of Portland, by 2 women who were diagnosed pretty close in time together, and they worked together. They weren't even like besties, but they were just like, we were both diagnosed with breast cancer, and there's no support out there for the time after you go through it. Because at 20 years ago, there just wasn't. You would go through, you would have your treatment, and then your oncology team would say you're done, and you leave, and then you're supposed to go back to normal. Well, as we all know, there is no normal after a cancer diagnosis. And so they founded Breast Friends, and the organization has been around for 22 years. And after my second diagnosis, I was lost. It was really challenging for me. I had a young son, he was 5, and he was in kindergarten at the time. And I was like, oh, well, now what do I do? Because I had been a stay-at-home mom, which was one of my joys in life, which I want to get back to, how so many of the joys in my life actually have come from midlife. So we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But so Breast Friends is an amazing organization, and they've really helped me move forward and find a whole new career for myself afterwards that I'm so passionate about.
So before we launch into your story more, I'm curious, how did you deal with the aftermath? I went to a conference here in Vermont, sponsored by the University of Vermont Medical Center, Women's Health and Cancer Conference. And I heard so many stories of people living in fear, living in this idea of, ambiguous grief, ambiguous loss. And that's something I'm really curious about now that I'm in it. You're right. It's always in the back of my mind. I want to go through these periods where I just let it go and I don't worry about it, but I've made some significant lifestyle changes. I've flattened my workaholic. I've given up alcohol, sugar, grains. Not that you have to do all of those things. My lifestyle is pretty healthy beforehand, but I know I've made some changes. How do you deal with this idea that, cancer is always in the back of my mind? I'm always kind of thinking about it a little bit, and this fear, and I know a lot of people are dealing with things like survivor guilt. You're going through it and you've lost friends and thinking, why am I still here? How do you deal with the aftermath?
Sure. So I just always had a thought in the back of my head. I do have a family history. My grandmother passed from metastatic breast cancer 9 years ago. And for some reason, I just always knew that it was going to happen to me. We do not have a genetic history, but I watched her go through that 3 times. And it was always just somewhere like, wow, you really need to be proactive. And I am also a poster child for early detection. Both of my very small stage 1 tumors were caught on mammograms. So I was proactive, but when it finally happened, I was like, okay, I can handle this. My son wasn't even 2 at the time. I was 41. And I'm like, I've got this. Technology has improved. There are so many wonderful things out there. I'm incredibly lucky. I have the most treatable form of breast cancer, ER/PR positive, HER2 negative, with the best studies, results, etc. So I opted for a lumpectomy and radiation and 4 years of tamoxifen. That was until my next diagnosis. It should have been longer, but I actually kind of just, I compartmentalized it and I moved forward, because at the time I was so focused on raising my son. And I also have 4 older stepkids and taking care of my house and my family and my dogs. I just kind of put it away, which I don't know how I did. I look back on it and I was like, wow, I was pretty proud of myself. But then when I was diagnosed the second time, 4 years later, it literally was like my balloon busted and I was broken, because at that point I was like, wow, if I can get it again, oh, I can get it again and again and again, because that's what happened to my grandmother. And I really thought that I was done for at that time, even though, again, I was stage 1, same type of cancer. It was a little more aggressive, but I went through treatment. At that point, I opted to have a bilateral mastectomy with reconstruction. I had my ovaries and uterus removed. Pretty much all the things that I could take out of my body, which identified me as a woman to society standards, were gone. And that was really challenging. The only person I knew in my immediate circle who had gone through it was my mother-in-law, and she was pretty private about it, even though she did help me quite a bit. But she was able to have an easier treatment path and move on. And 12 years later, she's doing great. But for me, it was, my son is only 5 at this time. This came back again. What do I do? And how do I get through this? And I went into a huge spiral of depression and anxiety and fear. I tried to work at my son's school because I needed to do something. And due to the pain in my body, I couldn't move forward. It literally, I quit after 3 days. I'm very fortunate that I live right by Breast Friends, and I'm like, I'm going to go do something. I'm going to volunteer. And the moment I walked in the door to volunteer, I realized I needed support. And it's been 5 years and I essentially have never left, because they gave me connection and community and education that I didn't know that I needed. And it literally turned my life around.
So what advice would you give someone who's listening and has said, and I think that happens, we go through the journey, right, of fighting the breast cancer, or whatever term you want to make. For me, it was more of I don't like the term fighting. I like the term, healing my body, getting everything back in balance. But we go through all the treatment and we're done. We ring a little bell, and then you're like, and then, the support sort of drops off with people who've been bringing you meals and supporting you. And so what advice would you give someone who feels like, okay, I'm through treatment, but I don't feel like I'm okay?
100% find a community of people who understand, because I had a wonderful support system with my husband, my friends, family, everyone was taking care of me in terms of my meals and my house cleaning and getting me to my appointments, but wasn't taking care of my emotions. And being able to find a community of women who understood exactly what I was going through, they got the fact that I was having pain and I couldn't move my arms, and life had just exploded for me, and they understood. And by sharing the trauma, it lessens it, and they're ahead of me in their journeys. And so they can be like, yes, we've made it through this. This is how we did it. And it's literally just like following in the path of the others who have gone before you. And they stay, and which is why I've stayed, because I want to help women who come after me, because finding an organization like this. So 100%. And you can even find places during treatment. We also support women during treatment, but there are Facebook groups out there. There are in-person groups now that we're coming out of the pandemic to find support. That is the biggest thing. Find people who get it.
Yeah, that's huge. For this conference that I went to, one of the 4 pillars that she talked about was connection.
Yes.
And how incredibly important it is to connect. And a lot of people, even in the room, as they were sharing their stories, were like, oh my gosh, she feels the way that I do. And she's been through this too. And I think whatever you're going through, whether it's breast cancer or something else, that connection is so important. And I love the way that you are now utilizing your experience to help other women, myself included, right? Because I'm a newbie to all of this. I'm only, 5 months in.
Mm-hmm.
To give people advice. And also sometimes we need that touch, we need that hug, especially now that we're getting out of these pandemic times, that you could just get a hug, that you can feel whole. Even as you said, when you have lost some parts of your physicality, you're still you and you're still whole, and you need touch and hugs. So I love that you're doing that, and also, of course, doing your podcast. So how do you find joy in your midlife, given everything you've been through?
Yes. So I consider myself a bit of a late bloomer in finding so much joy. In my 20s and 30s, I was really focusing on my career. I was a paralegal at a high-end law firm right out of college, and I did that for years. And then I became a chief level executive assistant. So I worked my butt off for quite a long time. And then I wanted something else out of life. I wanted a family. I wanted a husband, and I was in Los Angeles and living a different life. And I was like, screw it. I quit my job. I traveled for 6 months and I moved up to Portland, Oregon, and I found a job up here, and I met my husband 6 weeks later. So it was very interesting how it turned out. But so for me, the biggest joys in my life have come in my midlife, meeting my husband, having my son. I met my husband at 37, married at 39, had my son at 41. And then I had my cancer diagnoses also at 41 and 46. I can't do math. But then the second cancer diagnosis really gave me a whole new path, I guess I want to say. And it brings me so much joy, because on the podcast, which I host, Breast Friends Cancer Support Network, got to throw in that plug there, it allows me to give hope and inspiration, which is all that, if I can help one woman, I consider myself a success. And it's just so amazing to be able to be that person that someone looks up to, and that I can give information to and allow them to get through their journey easier.
And I love that you did a shift, because I think so often when I'm working with midlife women, they feel really stuck. They're doing the same old, getting the same results and wondering, what do I do? And often they're staying in a job because of the paycheck. They're living in an area because there's family there. And I love that you had the courage to say, screw it. This life isn't working for me. Yep. I'm going to do a completely different thing. I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to travel. I mean, it takes a lot of moxie.
It's funny. I look back on it now and I was like, wow, that was pretty ballsy. But at the time it was necessary. I had been working my butt off for a solid 10 years for a very busy entrepreneur, traveling. We did so many things, and it was a great career, and I made wonderful money, but I wasn't fulfilled. And I was fortunate enough after I moved here, and I worked here for 3 years before I became a stay-at-home mom. But then when he was off to school, I was like, ooh, now what do I do? And I was really experiencing that. I mean, the midlife crisis, as you want to say, like, what do I do now? And I literally have another midlife book here, but I've also just ordered yours so I can read that before our connection on my show. But this has filled me up so much, and it's given me a whole new career path for the rest of my life, which I so enjoy.
It's so important to just get started. So if you're feeling really stuck again, which is something that I think that we do at midlife, we're so dug in. And I think we've got more responsibilities, we've got more stressors. We also are a lot more afraid. I think when you're in your 20s, it's like, I got my whole life ahead of me. I can do whatever. I can travel. I can meet new people. I don't have to sort of settle down. It can be really, really tough. So your story is really inspirational, just both saying, screw it, I'm going to go and I'm going to live in a different part of the country. And I love Portland, Oregon, by the way. It's a fabulous city, but I'm going to, travel, live somewhere else, go for that dream of marrying somebody and being a mom and having this different life. But then also we're realizing when your son went to school, like, I need to fill this hole and do something. I'm not going to sit home all day and, watch soap operas, and actually putting yourself out there and finding something to do. And then eventually, finding best friends and being able to eventually volunteer, and then starting the podcast. How did the podcast get started? How did that happen?
Well, I wish I could say that I started that. Becky and Sharon did start it in 2016, and I took over in early 2021. Unfortunately, Becky has since passed from metastatic breast cancer. So every show I host is in honor of her and her memory. But she basically asked one day, do you want to co-host? I'm like, well, that sounds fabulous. And we never got to, but so I just kind of jumped in one day, scared to death, sweating like crazy. And now a year and a half later, you can't shut me up. So it's been, we've got 360 episodes now, I think. And so it's definitely an honor. And I love talking to people my favorite are people who've gone through it and then done something fabulous with their cancer journey and what comes out on the other side, because they also want to give back.
That's so cool. I don't know. And I'll be going to be on your show as well. And I'm really excited to talk about it, but I don't know if I've done anything, fabulous yet because of it. Although I'm going to work on a book around what I feel is missing and what I can contribute to support people. But the biggest thing for me so far is, I think I alluded to it, is flattening my workaholic.
Yes.
I was such a friggin' workaholic. It's not that I work 60 hours a day. It's just that I needed certain things to happen in my work. I needed things to happen. I needed more followers. I was like this voracious appetite for more followers, make more money, always a launch, always a book, always a radio show. And the cancer has been a real gift for me because I flattened that workaholic. And what's ironic is I'm getting amazing opportunities to do incredible things that were kind of on my vision board since I've let that workaholic go. And I'm doing things much more in connection with the universe, and also just have such a deep appreciation of how beautiful my life is. Like, I'm engaged to an amazing man and I live on this beautiful island and I'm having so much fun. I mean, yesterday we rode our tandem bicycle around the island with, we just having a blast. And I think the cancer diagnosis is this wake up call that anybody can have, that you realize that the best time of your life is now. Your whole life is in front of you, but you're more immortal.
Yes. And I 100% agree. Cancer is a wake-up call. And I definitely was not as healthy as you or as intentional of what I put in my body, but I've really changed that because I'm 51 and I have an 11-year-old son. I need to be around for a long time. So I need to do the best things I can to be healthier, because it's so important, as you said, what goes into your body, but also your environment. And stress is a huge, huge precursor to many a cancer diagnosis. We don't always know where they come from, but stress activates the cells in our body, and not in a good way. So being able to appreciate life more after a diagnosis, I think, is huge. And I'm not one who actually says cancer is a gift, but it has brought so many good things into my life that I don't say that I wish it didn't happen.
Yeah, as one survivor said at this conference that I went to, she's like, it puts your worst crap in front of you. You see all the worst parts of yourself come to the surface, and you have to work on those things that aren't working in your life. And it chisels you in a certain way. And may as well, why not make the best of it, since there's nothing you really can do. But stress is really at the core of all dis-ease. Really, it is what happens when we're stressed. Our cortisol levels go up, inflammation goes up. And it's so interesting too, because we're so stressed out, but we're totally safe. Most of the stress that we have for people who are listening to this is probably around, the day-to-day stuff, getting caught in traffic, having a fight with your spouse, worries about loved ones, parents, all of those things that we have so much at midlife. So we have 2 minutes left. What is next for you? What career plans do you have, and where do you see yourself in 5 years?
So I love the organization Breast Friends that I work for, and I definitely want to continue promoting what they do. Our mission is to support women, ensure that no one goes through cancer alone, but we support women. So, but for me, myself, I am finishing my own book, and I never liked pink and everything else that cancer taught me. And it's memoir-ish, but not linear in any way, but really all the different things that I have gone through because of cancer and the things that I learned from it. So I just want to share that. And honestly, I want to be on stage. I want to be someone who can go on a tour and talk about, cancer sucks, but these are the great things that happen in a fun, comedic kind of way. And obviously to continue podcasting, because I just love to talk. I'm a true born Leo, and I really like to be the center of attention. So any way that I can put myself out there, but that also helps other people.
Well, I can't wait to connect more with you, because I have a Leo rising and my Mars is in Leo, and I have my North node is in either my North or South node is in Leo. So totally get that being on stage, but doesn't it feel different when you're on stage because you want to help people? Yes. Versus I need to be seen. And I think that was a big switch for me. I
never in a million years would have imagined that I wanted to be up there on stage with a microphone in my hand, talking to the whole room. And now I get to, I MC our annual luncheon, which I'm going to do a quick shout out. We have in Portland, if you're in the Portland area, please go to breastfriends.org and check out our events page. The only luncheon supporting breast cancer awareness is going on through Breast Friends on October 29th. So please check it out. But honestly, I never thought that this would be something that is my thing, but I'm so passionate about it now. And I just want to help other women. And if I can do that by sharing my crazy stories, I'm 100% there.
Well, your energy, absolutely, Liz. So I'm sorry, Michelle. So great talking with you. In a moment, we're going to be talking with Liz Benditt, who is a senior marketing executive. She has had 4 different cancers over the course of 8 years, and she has created a fabulous website and product called the Balm Box. So stick with us. We'll be talking with her after the break. Hey, it's Dr. Ellen, the Midlife Whisperer. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. And before the break, we were talking with Michelle Beck, who is so inspirational. I hope you enjoyed that part of the show today. And now we're going to be shifting gears a little bit. We're going to talk with Liz Benditt, and she is a senior marketing executive with 25 plus years professional marketing experience. After enduring 4 different cancers over the course of 8 years, she leveraged her experience as both a marketer and cancer patient to launch the balmbox.com, which is a site featuring functional self-care and gift packages for cancer patients. In addition to her role as president and CEO of the Balm Box, Liz teaches undergraduate marketing courses at the University of Kansas School of Business, and she is a public school and community service advocate, serving on leadership boards for National Charity League for Greater Kansas City and the Mainstream Coalition. She lives in Kansas City with her husband, 2 teenage kids, and 1 terrible dog. Welcome to Rock Your Midlife, Liz.
Thanks for having me.
We all are dog lovers here. And what kind of dog do you have? I know that Michelle said you've got a golden lab and I
have a golden and a black lab.
And a black lab, and I have a border collie.
I'm part of the lab crowd. We have a rescue lab who is the laziest, fattest dog you've ever met. She counter surfs. Her goal is always still eat entire sticks of butter, including the wrapper. At one time. So talk about I really, really, really bad for you. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. We'd lay in traffic for her. She's our 3rd child, but she's awful.
Yeah, I totally get that. I had a Portuguese water dog who was so food obsessed. You could not leave anything. I once, chased her across the house. She stole a pork chop. So before we dive into...
In fact, the dog trainer calls that food motivated.
Yeah.
And I think that's just so funny because I'm like, well, if you give me enough peanut M&Ms, I might be food motivated too. So it's all good.
I might jump across the counter for that too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So before we dive into talking about you and your business, I know you've got a question for Michelle.
Yeah. So, you work with so many cancer patients, and I am in some ways, I try to participate in a lot of different online communities for women with breast cancer. And one of the things that I see a lot of are women, and it's my interpretation, and I could totally be wrong. So I'm really curious what you think, but I think especially older women who automatically knee jerk into whatever their surgeon says their treatment plan should be. They automatically take that as gospel, and they don't take a hot set to look at alternatives and to think about the options that they have, because a lot of times there are choices, and being dictated to, maybe it gives them a sense of confidence. It's possible, right? Being told this is what you have to do, there's nothing to think about, perhaps is an easier way to think about things. But my experience, of course, I'm really good at getting cancer, having it 4 different times. And I think one of the things I've learned, right, is that you have choices, and that doctors, there's as much science as art, right, to developing those treatment plans. And my sense is that a lot of times women are really afraid to look at alternatives. I'm curious if you see that in your work.
Definitely, Liz. That is such an important question. And there's so many parts of that to unpack. When myself included, when I was diagnosed, as I'm sure you know, your head explodes. You can't hear anything. It's like, wah, 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 wah. And you really you go into the doctor in the white coat, and there's something called good patient syndrome, where you want to listen to everything that they say and go forward like it's gospel, like they are the ones, they know the right way. And yes, while you say, and as you said, there are choices out there. So one thing I really talk about to the people in our groups and on the podcast is 100% to be your own advocate and to get a second and a third opinion if it doesn't make sense to you. Because so many of the things we're learning, we've never heard these terms before. You're in those first few appointments and you're hearing words that make absolutely no sense to you. But like you said, I do feel like it is more with an older generation of women, because the most common women who do get diagnosed with breast cancer, which is what I work with, are in their 60s and 70s. But the women who are more looking out for support usually are the younger women, because they're more open to talking about things. But no, I 100% agree. And that's something that I always really talk about is pull in integrative medicine, find a good naturopath, use acupuncture, use different kinds of myofascial therapy and physical therapy, try different supplements. Like I fully believe in Western medicine, but I want things to be complemented with the integrative medicine and all the other options that are out there. And totally. It's just, so yes, I 100% see that. And it's really just over and over, be your own advocate, ask questions. If it doesn't make sense or it doesn't feel right to you, just keep asking questions. That's the best advice that I can give.
Yeah, the research really shows that when you advocate for yourself and you create your own treatment plan, you actually have a better outcome. And doing things more conservatively, I found myself that I went into that tunnel of fear. When we go into fear, we turn off our brain. We're told, and they put you in this, this roller coaster of like, do these things, boom, boom. So for me, it was like surgery, radiation, and they wanted to do chemo. And I refused the chemo. And none of my doctors got the idea that I have a BRCA mutation, which means that none of my conventional doctors, they were all like, well, that's a different cancer. We don't care. They're only interested in clobbering the cancer that is on the plate at the moment. They're not interested in your overall, I should say all, but I found that was the focus. And so I went outside the box, and I have a osteopathic doctor. I have an integrated medical doctor. I have a naturopath. I put my well-being as my barometer of whether or not to do treatment, but it happens to most women get into this fear funnel, and they don't advocate for themselves.
They do. And I think they also, a lot of times I think doctors can misplace statistics. Like for me, when I was done with my breast cancer was my last cancer in 2017. And that after I was done with my surgery and radiation treatment, they said, okay, well, if you go on hormone therapy, you'll cut your odds of recurrence by 50%, which sounds like a lot. But for first of all, I asked, okay, well, is that true of premenopausal women? Because I'm younger than the average. I was diagnosed in my early 40s, and I had not gone through menopause and didn't really want to put myself into menopause unless I had to, right? And they
Plus,
said
that affects your
50%
bone health.
sounds like a lot. And so I said, okay, well, what are my odds of recurrence? Well, they're about 15%. So if you go from 15 to 7.5, like, that didn't feel like enough of a value to me relative to the other downsides, right, that go with hormone therapy. So I did what you did, Dr. Long. I said, okay, well, I went to my surgeon, I went to my radiation oncologist, and I said, I don't want to do this. So what are my alternatives? And instead, I just have additional follow-up care. So instead of getting a mammogram once a year, I get a mammogram once a year, and once a year I get a really crazy MRI thing where they MRI your boobs. It's very, very weird.
I've had it, been there.
Oh yeah, been there, done that.
You stick your boobs in the thing, and you just kind of like, whatever. People are manhandling your boobs and you're kind of over it. But yeah, like, dude, I'll do that once a year, no problem, right? Like that is infinitely better to me than all the downsides of the hormone therapy. But it's only because I questioned it and asked. I get that the standard of care is to do it, but when you force the conversation and say, well, I'm choosing not to, so what are our choices now? And I was really lucky in that, not even necessarily lucky, I chose my doctor, my healthcare team, specifically because I wanted people that would engage me in the conversation about my treatment plan and that wouldn't just be a little medical dictators, right? But I learned that from my 3 prior cancers. So other people don't have that benefit. And to a certain extent, those 3 cancers were a huge benefit.
Yeah. So tell us about the other 3. So your final one was breast cancer that was 2017, but you had 3 cancers before that. Tell us about those.
Did. So the first one was in 2009, and I had melanoma, and it was caught my baby. And we're all mothers, right? So I count things by the age of my children more than my own age. So my son was 1 and my daughter was 3. And it was one of those crazy things where it was diagnosed. I went in for a bio. My mom nagged me because she saw this mole in my leg, and she's like, you've got to go. And I blew her off. And finally I just went, right? So I went to the dermatologist. They looked at this little mole in my leg. She took it off on a Friday. She called me on a Tuesday and said, it's melanoma. I'm going to make an appointment with the surgeon. Whatever you have going on, you need to go to this appointment. And between Tuesday, that phone call, I had surgery that Friday. And it was just this race against the clock because melanoma is such a fast-moving cancer. They once it's diagnosed, they get you in there. Everything stops, and it was and had it spread to my lymph nodes, I wouldn't be here right now. I was very, very lucky. It was caught, early enough that it didn't spread, and that was like a crazy week of my life. And theoretically, you're supposed to just move on from it, which, as Michelle knows, there's a lot of compact trauma in there. But I tried, right? And again, I've got 2 little toddlers at home that are little need machines, and you just kind of move on. I made everyone slather up in sunscreen. I made my kids miserable for the rest of their lives because they can't go, no bikinis, must wear swim shirts and big floppy hats and all the good stuff. And then you fast forward 11 months, and I actually started doing breast mammograms early because my mom had breast cancer. So at 35, they asked me to start doing mammograms. My very first mammogram, they saw something they didn't like and had it biopsied. And while I was doing the appointment to have that biopsied, the breast cancer surgeon she was feeling me up, right, as they do, the hands. And then the hands started traveling up to my neck, and she found a lump in my neck, which turned out to be thyroid cancer. And I had absolutely no symptoms. I was completely fine. But, and at the time, by the way, the breast thing they found was nothing. And that was thyroid cancer. And in thyroid cancer, I was like, okay, so, it's Monday. So should I plan our surgery for Friday? And then you learn, oh, no, this isn't a fast moving cancer. And we want you to do these 8 billion labs. And so we'll get you in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And so this idea of living with cancer for 2 months was just crazy, but it was a gift, right? Because I was able to plan, and you were able to organize and get, food and rides and childcare and all that stuff organized. And it wasn't like I just left my team hanging when then I could plan for it, and projects at work and whatnot weren't left in the middle of things. Like it was much more convenient, right? To be able to organize that
But
cancer.
still that worry that you have as you're sort of living with this. I couldn't wait. I was diagnosed April
Totally.
12th and I had my surgery on May 5th. So I was happy to just I had the
That's
biopsy the
yeah,
next
3
day.
weeks
It
I
was
think
great.
sounds about right. The
Yeah.
6 to 8 was rough, right? That was a long time to kind of like agonize over it. And unfortunately, I fell into a teeny tiny percentage of patients that have this crazy side effect as a result of a thyroidectomy. It's 2% of patients become hypoparathyroid as a result of that surgery, and I'm one of them. I fell into that 2%, and I won't go into all the details, but I was in the hospital for almost 3 weeks, and while they tried to figure out how to regulate my calcium. When you became, as a nutritionist, you would understand.
Right.
When you're hypoparathyroid, your parathyroid glands regulate the calcium in your bloodstream, and my body can't do that on its own. And it's such a rare condition. There's not like a standard medicine that's used to regulate calcium. And so they had, it was a big old pincushion and trial and error until they could figure out a dosage of a particular medicine that would get me off of an IV calcium drip, which sucked. Don't recommend. 0 out of 10.
Yeah.
That wasn't fun. But and that was really hard. And so one of the post-op elements you're supposed to do as a result of a thyroidectomy is you're supposed to do radioactive iodine treatment, where basically you swallow radioactive iodine, and I envision it like Pac-Man, like going through your bloodstream to like pick up any of the errant thyroid cells. And so now I'm getting into the weeds because I fell into the 2%. Now I got to start asking questions. Well, what are my odds of recurrence? Well, my odds of recurrence are about, without the radioactive iodine treatment, about 2%. Okay, well, what are the odds of me having a side effect from this radioactive iodine treatment? Oh, about 4 to 5. No way. I'm not doing it. I opted out because I felt like, well, if I'm the one that falls into the weeds on this, crazy hypoparathyroid thing, I'm not going to do the radioactive iodine treatment. So same thing. What do I need to do instead? Well, we'll do more blood tests. Great. No problem. You can have as much blood as you want. And here I am 10 years later and I'm fine. I don't have no recurrence whatsoever. So again, those things you learn, right? And then you fast forward to 2015. Now me and my dermatologist were besties. You strip naked. They will look at every single inch of your skin looking for any kind of errant anything. And she found a little nudge on my nose, and it was basal cell skin cancer. And so the good news with basal cell is that it's very early stage. The downside is, and you can't see, the zoom is lovely, it kind of smooths this all out, but I actually have a lot of freckles. And so when you have a normal skin tone, what they can do for this kind of skin cancer, like right on your face, is that they would take a little chunk of skin from your neck and relocate it to the top of your nose where my basal cell was. But unfortunately, because of my freckle pattern, you couldn't do that. Like I would look like I had like a patch on my face. And so that I needed to go consult with plastic surgeons to find out how to remove the cancer and then have enough skin to cover my face, right? That was the goal. And so the first plastic surgeon that I consulted with started talking about this crazy surgery where they would cut from the inside of my eye line all the way down to like following like the laugh line in your face all the way down to kind of create an opening, and then they would use that to rearrange the skin on your face. And then I would have a C-shaped scar all along my face. And I thought, gosh, I'm going to be like disfigured for the rest of my life like that. I mean, I don't mean to be super vain, but gosh, that sucks. Like, I don't really want to be scarred. Is there another choice? And the guy was like, nope, when should I schedule your surgery? And I was like, I'm just going to check with some other folks. And so you learn, right? So then I went and I started looking for alternatives and said, is there anything else out there? And I started asking friends and family in the area. And I found the plastic surgeon in Kansas City who is known to be quote unquote good with faces. And I went to consult with him, and he had this alternative treatment idea. And it was a newer surgery at the time where basically it was a 2-part surgery where he would cut along the shadow of my nose, and then they stretch out the skin, which you're awake for, which I do not recommend. That sucked also. And then like, when you have a chicken, you're like stuffing like the herbs inside, like the skin part, like that's what they were doing to my face. It was really gross, but they did it. And then you walk around with this bandage on your, like sewn to your face for 10 days. Well, the skin like loosens up, and then go back for a second surgery and they close it back up. And there's no doubt that surgery was far more invasive and far more difficult to deal with than a single surgery, but I don't have a scar on my face, right? And I chose it. And so like it was so much easier to manage and right, like and like get over that all of the side effects that come with that crazy surgery process when I chose it, right? I had some agency in that decision. I think that feeling of a little bit of control when you feel so out of control with a cancer diagnosis to me was huge. So then 2 years later, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, it was not, I was much more resigned, like, this is going to suck. But I didn't freak out, oh my gosh, I'm going to die, right? It's a very different attitude when, and maybe it's a little arrogant, but I've survived this 3 times already. I'll be fine. This is just going to be horrible, but it'll be fine. You know, it's a different attitude. So,
wow.
And I can see you're trying to ask the question.
So much compassion for what you've been through. And I just see, if you're watching, if you're listening, Liz is gorgeous and she's sparkly and you can feel her infectious energy and she's still standing and smiling. And I think that's the cool thing when I meet survivors and talk to them, like, yeah, we're beautiful people who are moving on with our lives. And sometimes the things that really suck actually do make you stronger and make you more resilient and, you know, a more deeper, more beautiful person. So I want to talk a little bit about the worst thing you can say to a cancer patient, because for me, I got so many, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And I was like, first of all, don't say I'm sorry, you're sorry. I'm happy it was caught early. I could be in much worse shoes because I mean, all of us are sitting here because of our, you know, again, you're a poster child for early detection because everything was detected early. If you see something suspicious on your skin, get it checked out. It doesn't hurt to go to a dermatologist. But I tell people, like, either say, how can I help you?
Oh,
can
I challenge you on that?
Sure.
How can I help is the worst thing in the world you can say to someone, because how do you answer that? Right? Like, how can you help?
Well, I would say, sure, bring me, you know, you could bring me a meal. You could walk my dog. You could just listen to me, bitch. I mean, I think, you know, I mean, I don't know. I feel to me, but maybe that's individual. I got tired of I'm sorry because I feel like that's our default. So what's your answer when someone says the worst thing at a cancer patient? What do we say for people listening and going like, what do you say?
I super hated, how can I help? What I would rather, because I don't know what to say. I don't know, how much time do you have? How much money do you want to spend? What's your free time like? Mm-hmm. So I would much rather someone come to me and say, oh my gosh, that sucks. I'm going to help you out. Here are 3 things that I think that would be helpful. Let me know, you know, is there anything else you need beyond? I'm going to grab your groceries on Saturday. I'm going to walk your dog. I'm going to take over your dog walking. And I'm going to, you know, bring over Jello shots on Friday night, like whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be and that's my plan for you. Is there anything else I can do? So that you already put it out there, like what you're going to do, as opposed to putting it on me to come up with how you can help. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I always say, go to the balmbox.com and say, I like this Balm Box. Cause I think, I'm curious, how did you come up with that idea? Cause it's brilliant. I mean, I was thinking, everything went so fast for me and it was summer. And so it's just a beautiful time here in Vermont. So I didn't feel like I needed anything like that, but I could imagine some people, particularly people with more invasive, extensive, and just wanting something to bring a smile. How did you come up with the idea?
You talked about your care, and I'm deeply jealous that you had radiation. It was no big deal, because I went into my radiation program thinking, you know, I run marathons, I'm fine. I'm not gonna, you know, I have great endurance. This isn't gonna affect my life at all. It's gonna just be inconvenient, right? The only thing I had planned on was not driving my kids to school, because I was gonna do my appointments at 7:45 in the morning so I could get to the office by 9. Like literally, I was not gonna let it be a hindrance. And I burned to a crisp. Like my skin didn't just turn red, it turned purple. Chunks of skin fell off. I had to pause multiple times to keep going. It was really hard on me. And at the time, so I was looking for all the stuff that I needed for radiation, things like and also, you can't tell in this video, but I have larger tatas, and walking around without a bra for me was not an option. Like I couldn't go to work, where at the time I was an executive at a commercial manufacturing company. 80% of the employees are men. I had to walk through the factory. I was not walking through that factory without a bra. Like that was just not going to happen. And yet at the same time, like putting on an underwire bra was just, I couldn't do it. It was way too painful. And so I needed like wire-free bras, and I needed things that I could, undershirts that would at least kind of hold me in tight and give me some feeling of support. I needed lotions. I needed ice packs that wouldn't leak through my clothes. I needed all this stuff. And what people kept sending me were pink Cancer Warrior t-shirts and tote bags and coffee mugs. And it's so well-meaning. It really is. But I'm just not the kind of person that wants to run around wearing pink stuff and declaring myself a cancer warrior. Like, that's just not I didn't like that. That to me was just, I was in my comfort zone. I didn't want to go around bragging about my status as a cancer warrior patient survivor. Like, that wasn't that was not appealing to me. And so you fast forward, and so I kept thinking, so you asked, where the idea for the Balm Box came from, and I kept looking for, where's radiationrelief.com? Like, where is this stuff? And it didn't exist. And I kept thinking, there's got to be a business here. And so you fast forward to the early days of the pandemic. In the back of my mind, I'd been thinking about launching some variation of the Balm Box. And my husband and I even started planning for it, right? The idea of like, okay, well, if I'm going to, we're a 2-income family, and if I want to go rogue entrepreneur, what's that going to really look like for our family? And, we need to save money because we can't just go crazy. And so anyway, I did some market research, and in the beginning of the pandemic, we sent out a survey to everyone we knew and asked people to share it. And it went viral because people were at home in the pandemic and bored, and answering a survey was something to do. And we collected almost 600 responses, which was amazing. And the cancer patients, when you asked them, what are the things that you would like to receive as a gift or needed, all of them were functional, things like ice packs and lip balm and lotion, right? And the things, when you ask them, what are some of the things that you on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate these things? Like, and the things that got the worst scores, the absolute nobody wants: Kicking Cancer tote bags, Kicking Cancer coffee mugs, worry stones, inspirational books of poetry. So, and then you ask people, what gifts are you buying? And it's mostly flowers and food, right? And so I thought, wow, there's this real disconnect, right, between what cancer patients want and need and what people are giving them. And gosh, maybe I can connect those two things, and that's a real business. So that awesome. Was how Balm Box was born.
It's great. I wish I knew about it earlier in my diagnosis. So we only have about a minute left, and I know Michelle's got a question for you. Michelle, can you unmute and ask Liz a question?
Oh my gosh, I actually have so many questions. Liz, my first question is, when are you going to be a guest on my podcast? Because I want to talk all about Balm Box. Because I did follow you even before this, so I had already known about it. It's so fabulous. But honestly, going through 4 cancer diagnoses in 8 years, you are like, as Dr. Ellen mentioned, you are incredibly positive and you shine. Did you go to a therapist, or literally is this just your? I mean, because
I'm have like a minute left.
I know I'm a huge therapy person, but is that how you got through?
No, I wish I could give a better answer to this, because people ask me this all the time, and I will tell you no. And not that I think that's a great idea, and maybe I should have, but at the end of the day, I'm incredibly lucky that I have a phenomenal support network. One of the positives to me from cancer, if you go back to and again, I wouldn't wish on anyone, you wouldn't choose it, it's not on my vision board, but it did test my marriage in a way and it found it strong, right? And so, and I found, strength in that. And I found strength in, I have the most incredible girlfriends that threw me a finish line party, right? There's pictures of that on my website. And, so I think that support, so it's not like I didn't have support is what I'm saying. I just found it another way.
Perfect.
So thank you. We are out of time, but thank you all for watching, listening to Rock Your Midlife. Michelle, Liz, great to be with both of you. Quickly, Michelle, where can people find you?
So you can find me on social media at I Never Liked Pink, and you can find Breast Friends at breastfriends.org.
And Liz?
You can find thebalmbox.com. It's TheBalmbox.com, and we're on all the socials.
Awesome. Thank you, women, so much for sharing your inspirational stories. And thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next week.